What's good everyone, I'm Zayas, and today I'm reviewing Ragna Crimson by Daiki Kobayashi. Ragna Crimson's anime is almost here, so it seems like a good time for a review. Kobayashi kicked off his career with Sky Blue, which was a bit of a mess. Although it did have an Eva reference, it wasn't great. And then he followed that up with Satsui no Senki, which was a lot better and a lot more in line with what he did on Ragna Crimson. Kobayashi quoted Hunter x Hunter and Drifters as two big influences for Ragna Crimson, and although I have a hard time drawing similarities between this work and Hunter x Hunter, I can see the Drifters' influence. They have that same sort of edge to them. Crimson being loosely based on Nobunaga makes a lot of sense too. Ragna Crimson is a series that I have a lot of conflicting views on. It has quite a few strengths, but to go alongside that, it has a ton of weaknesses as well. This manga got off to a rocky start, after which I felt like it improved after the first 10 to 15 chapters. The plotline initially at least feels unique, which is great, even though at its core it's really not. For example, the initial time manipulation was inspired by Steins Gate, and although Ragna Crimson takes inspiration from all these series, the experience you get while reading it is vastly different from any of those series. If I were to attempt to describe the series, it would sound like a generic shonen, but it doesn't feel like that when you're reading it because of all these different elements of storytelling and how different the characters are. It does feel unique, and that's great. But with this comes a host of other problems, and some of the largest problems have to do with the characters and story themselves. Early versions of Ragna and Crimson are cringeworthy and edgy. Ragna is this dude who's a bit of a coward. He's like a spineless coward who's constantly whining, and he gets all his powers handed to him. And Crimson is essentially this devil that he makes a deal with. Figuratively, he's a devil. Literally, he's a dragon. But his character really isn't too interesting. He's basically just pure evil. He wants revenge on these dragons, and he's willing to go to whatever length it takes to get it. In later parts of this manga, they did dial back some of the annoying parts of these characters, but you still never really know when an edgy scene is creeping around that corner. Alongside with them getting a bit better after the 15 chapter mark, there's also other characters who are introduced who are pretty decent. This Silverware Princess was my favorite character in this series. She was lighthearted and fun. She was brave even though she was scared at times, and there's a lot to like about her. I really liked her designs, and the characters that follow her as well also have some pretty solid designs. They maybe have one or two noticeable personality traits though, and if you were to add that all up, I'd say as characters they're mostly just okay. I'd say this for Ragna and Crimson as well. Characters are just fine, nothing exceptional, nothing awful. The motivations behind these characters and the reason they're fighting is quite plain. This series is framed in a way where the dragons and the humans have to hate each other, and while this does get the plot moving and has lots of fights, it's not great for interaction between these characters. There's literally no meaningful interaction between our protagonists and the villains. What I said about the characters can apply to the villains too. Artemisia can feel annoying with how in-your-face she is about being delusional. Nebulim can be a bit cowardly, just like Ragna at the start of the series. And Kamui, although I did want to like him, he just ended up being a little too edgy and a little too dramatic for my liking. I did love his design though, and villains are typically very uncaring about human life. Obviously, since they're dragons, they're pretty condescending and cocky, honestly very standard things you'll see, and there's not really much to talk about. These are not great things for this series, and to top it off, whether you're a villain or a protagonist, your backstory is usually pretty bare bones. You don't get much insight into these characters through their backstories. And while I said this plot does feel different than your average shonen work, there are still a lot of things which hurt this manga. A lot of story ideas seem rushed and like they weren't planned out in advance. The reason why dragons attacked this kingdom was retconned. First they say it was because of this cake shop that the god went to, but then later they go on to say that Kamui attacked without telling any of the other dragons. So which is it? Moments when they talk about these characters' abilities these poisons, all these new characters, they only ever happen when the series needs them to progress. It ends up making the series feel like it has a bunch of plot devices just to keep it going. The plot just unravels so conveniently all the time. These dragons will go into the kingdom maybe 2 or 3 at a time, so these characters can kill them 2 or 3 at a time. There's poisons which are introduced which do completely crazy things only because the plot needs them to do this certain thing. There's also these random crazy conclusions that characters jump to from very little information that don't make very much sense. Crimson somehow deduces that Artemisia can't use her ability, even though there's countless other explanations as to why she didn't use her ability. Maybe she wasn't in range, maybe she didn't want to expend the energy. There's tons of explanations, but Crimson somehow picked out the correct one. There's even the old man who just knows that Ragna didn't get his power from talent. And you even get the teleport circle, the dragon just knowing that these guys are going to teleport out with literally no information. And while the story can feel interesting, it is pretty basic. Ragna is just inheriting this power so that he can defend humanity from these hordes of dragons. Also, in one of the more recent chapters, this claw dragon shows up and everybody just shits themselves. It was honestly an awful scene. It was unbearable. I think it may have been a possible reference to Hunter x Hunter. I really hope this wasn't a reference to Pidu. It's way too bad to be. Overall, I'd say the story elements are okay. It has its moments, but it also has a lot of bad moments. The best part of this series is likely the art. Overall, the art isn't crazy good, but what I like the most is by far the character design. He said that Monster Hunter helped influence his designs, and I guess that turned out for the best because these designs are wonderful. Whether it's Ragna, Crimson, the Silverware Princess, the slime, all these random dragons or just random people, they all look pretty distinct. They all fit the series quite well. I really have nothing bad to say about any of them. Action-wise, the series does a much worse job of framing fights. The panels are usually cluttered with tons of effects and showy visuals. It's convoluted. Kobayashi was even feeling himself enough to the point where he made an entire action sequence without any dialogue. And it's really, really bad. Sometimes the fights do feel okay because the character designs do carry some of these fights, but that's not always the case. This series has a lot to like and a lot to dislike. I don't really see it improving that much. This series wrote out one of its best characters and it's still doing edgy moments. I'd say it's an okay read overall, nothing spectacular, but nothing awful. I'm feeling a strong 5. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment about anything relating to manga. I said I would do videos every Sunday, which I still plan on doing, but it is currently Sunday and I don't have much time left to upload this. So if this comes out Monday, it's not my fault. I'll still be doing Sundays past this though. I'll see you guys next time.